The courtroom is heavy with tension. The air is thick, almost suffocating. The judge taps his gavel sharply. "Order in the court!" His voice booms through the silent room. At the defense table sits 16-year-old Jamal, his hands clenched into tight fists. He doesn't belong here, but the system doesn't care. Friends, before I share today's episode, I want to tell you an interesting stat. 99% of the people who watch our content enjoy it, but they haven't subscribed to our channel yet. If you're one of those 99%, all you need to do is a small task. Just look below this video, you'll see a subscribe button. All you have to do is click that subscribe button. It's as simple as that. And if you want, you can also press the bell icon so that you're the first to know whenever we upload a new video. Now, let's dive into the video. Across the room, Officer Daniels, a seasoned white cop, leans back in his chair with a smug grin. His testimony was clear, direct, and damning. The prosecutor paces in front of the jury, her confidence unshaken. "Ladies and gentlemen," she says, gesturing dramatically, "we have an eyewitness. We have video. This is an open and shut case." The jury barely reacts. They've already made up their minds. In their eyes, Jamal is just another young black kid in trouble. Just another statistic. Jamal's mother clutches her purse, whispering silent prayers. She knows the truth. She knows her son is innocent. But does that even matter? Jamal stares down at the cold wooden table in front of him. His life hangs in the balance. If convicted, he could spend years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. But what happens next will change everything. Because Jamal isn't just another statistic. He has a defense zone so powerful, it will shake the entire courtroom to its core. What happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. Stay till the end, because this case isn't what it seems. The courtroom feels like a battlefield, but Jamal has no armor. He sits in a chair that's too big for him, drowning in an oversized suit. His hands rest stiffly in his lap, his fingers pressing against the fabric. His mother sits behind him, her hands gripping the edge of the bench, her knuckles white. Her eyes glisten, but she refuses to cry. Not yet. At the front of the room, Judge Lawson leans forward. He's an older white man with deep lines on his face, the kind of judge who's seen it all. But the way he's looking at Jamal, disapproving, distant, it's like he's already decided. On the witness stand, Officer Daniels looks too comfortable. His arms are crossed, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He smirks slightly, as if this is just another day at work. As if sending Jamal away is routine. The jury, they barely glance at Jamal. Some of them look bored, others shift in their seats, avoiding his gaze. No one sees him as a kid. No one sees the fear beneath his calm expression. Then, Prosecutor Lisa Morgan stands. She smooths down her sharp grey suit, then turns to the jury with a smirk. She loves this, the attention, the power, the performance. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she begins, her voice rich with confidence. "What we have here is not a complicated case." She picks up a folder, opens it, and reads the charges like she's announcing the weather. Armed robbery. $15,000 stolen from a convenience store. A masked suspect caught on surveillance. She walks slowly across the courtroom, then stops right in front of the jury. "And who do we have here?" She gestures toward Jamal. "A young man caught near the scene. A young man who fits the description. A young man who had every reason to commit this crime." A dangerous silence. Jamal doesn't flinch. He doesn't move. He just watches. Public defender Mike Reynolds clears his throat. He's a thin man with tired eyes, clutching a few loose papers. He shifts uncomfortably, flipping through notes he should have memorized. "Your Honor," he starts. But there's hesitation in his voice. Uncertainty. Weakness. Jamal doesn't react. But inside, he knows. No one here believes in him. No one except himself. He straightens his shoulders, his mind sharp. He knows the truth. He sees the cracks in their case. And when the time comes, he'll make them see it too. Jamal doesn't react. Not yet. He stays still, his hands gripping the edge of the defense table. His jaw tightens, but he doesn't interrupt. The courtroom is watching, waiting, and the weight of those stares presses down on him. On the witness stand, Officer Daniels sits confidently. His uniform is crisp, his badge polished to perfection. He leans forward slightly, locking eyes with the jury. "I was patrolling the area that night. He begins, his voice steady, practiced. Around 9:45 p.m., I saw this young man near the convenience store. He was acting suspicious looking around, walking fast, like he didn't want to be seen. The jury listens intently. The prosecutor, smiling faintly, lets him continue. I approached to ask a few questions. That's when he ran. A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Running? That never looks good. Daniels leans back slightly, his confidence growing. We later found a black hoodie in his backpack, the same type the suspect wore in the security footage. He glances at the jury, reading their expressions. He knows this sounds solid. A black teen near the crime scene running from police. Most of them have already made up their minds. The prosecutor steps forward. Officer Daniels, based on your experience, do you have any doubt about this boy's guilt? Daniels smirks. None. I know what I saw. Jamal's fingers tighten around the table. He knows this is a lie. He didn't run because he was guilty, ran because he was scared. He ran because, in his world, when cops stop young black men at night, things don't always end well. But he says nothing, not yet. Public Defender Mike Reynolds clears his throat. Nervous, he flips through his notes, but his hesitation is obvious. Jamal can feel it. His own lawyer doesn't believe in him. The jury is watching the cop, nodding slightly. They trust him. Why wouldn't they? He's Officer Daniels. He's been on the force for 20 years. His word carries weight. And right now, his word is burying Jamal alive. But then a shift. As Officer Daniels continues talking, small cracks start to show. His story is smooth, too smooth, rehearsed. And when cross-examination starts, those cracks will start to widen. A heavy silence hangs over the courtroom. Officer Daniels shifts slightly in his seat, but his smirk remains. He still thinks he has control. Jamal, however, isn't backing down. Public Defender Mike Reynolds rubs his temples, already expecting the worst. He knows how these cases go. He knows speaking up could make things worse. But Jamal doesn't care. Reynolds sighs, turning to his client. Jamal, do you have anything to say? Jamal lifts his head. His voice is steady, clearer than it has been all day. Yeah, I didn't do it, and I can prove it. The courtroom erupts. Murmurs spread like wildfire. A defendant boldly challenging a cop. This isn't how things are supposed to go. Judge Lawson narrows his eyes, tapping his gavel. Order! Order in the court! Officer Daniels scoffs, arms crossed. Oh yeah? And how exactly are you going to do that? Jamal turns his gaze directly to the officer, calm, focused. You said I ran. You said you chased me. But where's the body cam footage? The room goes still. Daniels flinches just for a second. Prosecutor Lisa Morgan quickly steps in. Officer, please explain. Daniels clears his throat, masking his hesitation. Well, it wasn't on. A few jurors shift in their seats. That doesn't sound right. Jamal leans forward slightly. Convenient. The whispering in the courtroom grows louder. Jamal isn't just defending himself, he's exposing a lie. Judge Lawson looks annoyed. Mr. Reynolds, control your client. But Jamal isn't done. He stands up, his voice louder. And you said you found a hoodie in my bag. But did you actually see me wearing it, or do you just assume we all look the same? A sharp gasp ripples through the courtroom. Daniel stammers. I saw you near the store. Jamal crosses his arms. Near, but not inside. So, no body cam footage. No actual proof I wore the hoodie. Just your word? For the first time, Officer Daniels isn't smirking. Jamal turns to the jury. Look at him. He's sweating now, isn't he? A few jurors glance at each other. Doubt is creeping in. Reynolds, still in shock, finally snaps into action. Your Honor, I think we need to take a closer look at this so-called evidence. Judge Lawson exhales sharply. He doesn't like this, but the courtroom is too unsettled to ignore it. Fine, the judge mutters. We'll review the evidence again. Officer Daniels shifts in his seat once more. For the first time since the trial began, he doesn't look so confident. The tension in the courtroom is thick. Jamal is standing his ground, and for the first time, Officer Daniels looks uneasy. Judge Lawson rubs his temple, then exhales sharply. We'll review the footage. Prosecutor Lisa Morgan doesn't look thrilled. She hesitates. Then, with a forced smile, she nods to the bailiff. Play the surveillance video. The screen flickers to life. The grainy black and white footage from the convenience store appears. The room falls silent as the jury leans forward, watching closely. A masked figure enters the store. The person wears a black hoodie with the hood pulled up. They walk toward the counter, glancing around. Then, in one swift motion, they reach into their pocket, pull out what looks like a gun, and shove it toward the cashier. A few seconds later, the alarm goes off, and the suspect runs out. Jamal leans forward, his eyes narrow. Something is off. He turns his head slightly towards the judge. Pause it. The bailiff stops the video. Judge Lawson sighs. "What now?" Jamal steps closer to the screen, pointing at the frozen image. "Look at his build. That's not me." The jury squints. Jamal pulls at the sleeves of his suit, showing his arms. The suspect in the video is bulkier, broader shoulders, thicker arms. Lisa Morgan quickly interjects. "The hoodie could have made him look bigger." Jamal doesn't even acknowledge her. He's not done. Zoom in on the shoes. The bailiff hesitates, then does as he says. The suspect's shoes are scuffed, old, 2 sizes too big. Jamal turns to the judge. "I was arrested wearing brand new sneakers. Check my arrest record. I wasn't wearing those shoes." A quiet murmur spreads across the courtroom. Lisa Morgan clenches her jaw. Judge Lawson leans forward slightly. He's starting to pay attention. Jamal takes a slow breath, then delivers his final blow. "One more thing. Watch his hands." The bailiff rewinds the footage slightly, then plays it in slow motion. The suspect grabs the money with his left hand. Jamal holds up his right hand. "I'm right-handed." The murmurs grow louder. A few jurors exchange looks. The evidence that was supposed to prove his guilt is now unraveling before their eyes. Jamal steps back, his expression calm. "So tell me, how is that me?" Lisa Morgan has no response. Officer Daniels shifts uncomfortably. And for the first time since this trial started, Jamal feels the tide turning in his favor. A heavy silence blankets the courtroom. The surveillance footage has planted doubt, and for the first time, Officer Daniels' confidence wavers. Public Defender Mike Reynolds straightens his tie and stands up. He's been passive for most of the trial, but now he has something to work with. He walks slowly toward the witness stand, his voice steady. "Officer Daniels, you said Jamal ran when you approached him, correct?" Daniels nods immediately. "Yes, he took off as soon as I tried to question him." Reynolds glances at the jury. "And you also stated that he resisted arrest?" Daniels nods again. "That's correct." Jamal doesn't move, but inside, his pulse quickens. This moment is important. Reynolds pauses, then turns toward the bailiff. "Can you please play Exhibit C?" The screen flickers to life again. This time it's a different surveillance camera, one positioned on a street corner near the convenience store. The footage rolls. Jamal is there walking. His pace is normal. His hands are in his pockets. He isn't looking over his shoulder, isn't acting suspicious. He's just walking home. A police car pulls up beside him. Officer Daniels steps out. Jamal stops immediately. He doesn't run. He doesn't even flinch. The courtroom erupts in murmurs. Reynolds lets the moment sink in, then turns back to Daniels. "Officer, I don't see anyone running, do you?" Daniels shifts in his seat. "Well, Lua must have started running after that." Reynolds crosses his arms. Roll the footage forward. The bailiff continues the video. Jamal remains completely still. Daniels walks up to him, immediately grabbing his wrist. Jamal doesn't fight, doesn't struggle. The arrest is calm, clean. Nothing like the dramatic chase Daniels described earlier. The courtroom gasps. Jamal's mother covers her mouth, her eyes wide. Even Judge Lawson leans forward slightly. Reynolds turns back to Daniels, his voice sharp. "You said he ran. You said he resisted arrest. This footage proves that neither of those things are true." Daniels' face reddens. Lisa Morgan quickly stands. "Objection! Maybe this camera didn't catch the whole thing. The officer might have pursued him earlier." Reynolds raises an eyebrow. "Then where's the body cam footage?" Morgan closes her mouth. The jury is no longer looking at Jamal as a criminal. They're looking at Daniels. And for the first time, he looks nervous. The courtroom is no longer just 10 sights on edge. Officer Daniels has been caught lying, but no one understands why. Why would a veteran cop risk his credibility to frame a teenage boy? Jamal knows the answer, and he's about to expose it. Slowly, he reaches into the pocket of his oversized suit and pulls out a folded newspaper clipping. The courtroom watches, confused. Even Judge Lawson squints, trying to see what it is. Jamal holds it up, his voice steady. "Officer Daniels, do you remember arresting a guy named Leon Carter?" The room goes silent. Daniels' smirk finally vanishes. His body stiffens. His fingers curl slightly around the edge of the witness stand. Lisa Morgan quickly stands. "Objection! Irrelevant!" Reynolds raises his hand. "Your Honor, this goes to motive." Judge Lawson narrows his eyes, then nods. "Overruled. Continue." Jamal doesn't hesitate. He unfolds the newspaper, reading aloud. "Local gang leader Leon Carter was arrested last year in a sting operation led by Officer Daniels. The arrest resulted in Carter receiving a 25-year sentence. Upon sentencing, Carter told reporters, 'This isn't over. Watch your back.' The jurors exchange uneasy glances. Jamal looks back at Daniels. "Leon Carter is my cousin." A gasp ripples through the courtroom. Daniels' face twitches, but he says nothing. Jamal steps closer, his voice louder now. "You assumed I was just like him, didn't you? You saw me and thought, another Carter, another criminal." Daniels swallows hard. His silence says everything. Jamal's eyes stay locked on him. "You didn't arrest me because I did something wrong. You arrested me because of my last name." The courtroom erupts in whispers. For the first time, Jamal isn't on trial. Officer Daniels is. Judge Lawson bangs his gavel. "Order!" But even he can't ignore what's happening. Jamal's mother clutches her chest, realizing what this has been about all along. Reynolds steps in. "Your Honor, we now have reason to believe Officer Daniels' arrest was based on personal bias, not actual evidence." Daniels looks down at the witness stand, his confidence completely gone. And just like that, the case shifts completely. The courtroom is no longer under Officer Daniels' control. Jamal's words hang in the air like a storm cloud. The jury, the spectators, even Judge Lawson, everyone is staring at Daniels now. For the first time, he's the one being questioned. Judge Lawson leans forward, his fingers laced together, his voice sharp and firm. "Officer Daniels, do you have any real evidence against Jamal?" Daniels opens his mouth, then closes it. He glances toward prosecutor Lisa Morgan, but she doesn't move. She knows. There's nothing left to say. The jury is still watching. Some of them are leaning forward, waiting. Daniels clears his throat. His smug expression is gone. His hands grip the edge of the witness stand. "Well, Your Honor," he stops. He knows he's trapped. Judge Lawson narrows his eyes. "Let me rephrase that. Do you have any fingerprints? Any DNA? Any solid proof tying Jamal to this crime?" Daniel's jaw tightens. He shakes his head. Silence. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Jamal doesn't move. He doesn't smile. He doesn't celebrate. He just watches. Because he knew this moment was coming. Judge Lawson lets out a slow, tired sigh. He adjusts his glasses, then looks toward Lisa Morgan. "Does the prosecution have any further arguments?" Morgan, usually so confident, shuffles her papers without looking up. She has nothing. Judge Lawson straightens his shoulders. His voice cuts through the noise. "Then I have no choice but to dismiss these charges. The defendant is free to go." For a moment, just a moment, there's complete silence. Then the courtroom explodes. Jamal's mother lets out a sharp, choked sob. She covers her mouth, tears spilling down her face. Spectators whisper, some shaking their heads, others sighing in relief. Jamal lets out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Across the room, Daniels slowly stands up. He says nothing, but his jaw is tight, his hands clenched at his sides. His case just collapsed in front of everyone. Jamal turns slightly, locking eyes with him one last time. Daniels looks away first. The bailiff steps forward, unlocking Jamal's handcuffs. Jamal rubs his wrists, then looks back at his mother. She doesn't wait. She rushes forward, pulling him into a tight embrace. And finally, lets himself feel it. He's free. Jamal stands slowly, his legs feeling light for the first time in days. Judge Lawson's voice still echoes in his ears. The defendant is free to go. Those words should feel like victory. But to Jamal, They feel like survival. The bailiff steps forward, unlocking the last of his restraints. The cold steel of the handcuff slips away, leaving faint red marks on his wrists. His mother doesn't wait. She rushes to him, pulling him into a tight embrace. Tears stream down her face. She doesn't say anything she doesn't have to. He can feel it in the way she holds him. The relief, the fear, the anger. Across the room, Officer Daniels grips the edge of the witness stand. His face is tight with frustration. His career might survive this, but his reputation won't. He turns sharply, storming out of the courtroom without looking back. Lisa Morgan, the prosecutor, gathers her files quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The system almost ruined Jamal's life today, and Jamal knows if he hadn't fought back, it would have succeeded. He steps back from his mother, his eyes scanning the room. The jurors, the spectator-some of them, still won't meet his gaze, because even though he won, they all know the truth. This wasn't justice. This was luck. And next time, someone else might not be as lucky. The sun feels warmer than it should as Jamal steps outside the courthouse. But freedom doesn't feel the way he imagined. His mother walks beside him, holding his arm like she's afraid to let go. His lawyer, Mike Reynolds, trails behind, adjusting his briefcase, avoiding his eyes. Jamal finally stops. He turns to Reynolds. What happens to the people who don't have evidence? Reynolds exhales slowly. He looks at the ground, then back at Jamal. They lose. That's it. No sugarcoating, no excuses, just the truth. Jamal knew the answer before he even asked. Because that's the reality of the system. He takes a deep breath, then turns to the camera, turns to us. His voice is steady, calm, controlled, but powerful. This wasn't justice. This was luck. Like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story.